One. All right. I think this is the last of the sevens. We've had a great run of 8 weeks of seven, which is I wish it was 7 weeks of seven, but we're on the 28th. So here we are. This has been a pretty big week. Lots going on. It's almost like I can't keep track of like the major announcements that happened 2 days ago because there's a new announcement that's even more exciting than the previous. But I think that we're seeing like this dramatic increase in capability, both in these models, like the new Gemini model that came out, 2.5, crazy, awesome, free. Oh, it's only, what would you say, Rob? Only 5 requests per minute
Per
or something?
minute. Yeah,
Yeah, which
just
kind of,
enough to wet your whistle.
yeah. So luckily I've got like 10 Google accounts, so maybe I'll do some kind of load balancer. Maybe that, oh no, I'm gonna have to get my bot to build that now.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. You got to set it up and as a standalone API call like Requesty or OpenRouter.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get the guys from Requesty to create some kind of like load balancer that allows us to get more than 5 requests, something like that. And that could be that could be a side product of the Requesty guys that we'll have on, who we have coming up here shortly, right?
We do, yeah. So today we've got Daniel Tugman from Requesty, and he's going to be showing us not just the platform, but also custom prompt that further enhances the token savings. So that's great, Daniel. Looking forward to that. Thank you. And then as well, we've got Joseph, Dr. Joe. Joseph's on. He's going to be sharing his Obsidian MCP setup, which is, yeah,
Okay.
very timely. Should be good. And I just want to give a shout out. Review and I were talking before we got started here. We had Splix, Dorian, and Chris from Splix on there last week, and wanted to give a congratulations. Sandy Dunn is their new CISO officer. That's a great hire for the team there, and wonderful to see for somebody from the community. And then Splix closed their $7 million seed round. So great news for those guys. They've been working hard. It's nice that they built out that open source component. I think it's called Agent Radar, which is wonderful. And then also Guy Bieber, last minute ad. He's got a little tool he came across that gives you unlimited 3.5 Sonnet 3.5 for $4 a month. So that'll be the third Lightning tool.
Oh,
So should be good.
unlimited. Okay, I'm excited to hear about that.
Yep.
Here I'm trying to save a buck every way I can. $4 is great. My bill this week is down dramatically thanks to someone we'll have on here in a minute. I don't want to spoil their thunder too much, but yeah,
Awesome.
their system seems to work at the Requesty, so it'll be exciting to see what they have. There's so much to show. I'm not even sure where to start. So the biggest topic is probably, one, the images that are being created probably in ChatGPT. And for those who haven't seen it, it works particularly well. It's a major upgrade, a little slow. I think Altman said that their servers are melting. Is that what I heard, Robert? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Here's an example. Here's me. I guess my legs are a little longer than that, I guess, but I should have wore that shirt instead of my tropical shirt today.
That's the stern look, the stern move.
A little creepy. It's Here we go. This is me in the Middle Ages, I guess. My legs haven't gotten any longer. I'm like, make it look more like me here, and like it sometimes goes into various designs. What else do I got here? It's here. I've been playing, or the cyber one I did last night turned out pretty cool. If you guys
Yeah, I
see
saw
some of
that one.
those.
That's great.
Yeah, here, we can look at how I created those. So in I just created a picture myself, nothing, and then I said here, make me into a cyborg with metallic skin. A little too gray for me. Then it went and looked up some other designs, which was kind of an interesting approach. So basically, it's trying to figure out what I want. Then it gave me this design, and I said, no, make it look like more like me, and give it sunglasses. And then I veered into the sort of the world of like just different styles. Like this one, I said more steampunk, which is it's kind of steampunky. More Japanese Bashito. This is actually kind of my favorite, I think. I really like and
Yeah.
apparently I don't speak Japanese, but according to my wife who grew up in Tokyo, she says that the latest model actually does kanji and she could read it. So there you go. I didn't realize that it in the apparently the previous version, the kanji was just gibberish. Now, the other thing to show this week, there's been some major upgrades to IDEO Graphic 3. And if you think that the model that this model that I was showing you for ChatGPT is good, this is even better. So this is how I created my models this morning if you're curious. But what's really cool about this, if you go in here, I can actually mix and match. So here I define my color scheme. So you can see here I've got pink and gray and so on. Then I can use another image to give it the style. So I can actually create one image, then pass it along and use it. So for example, so this is the reference image. So this was an image I created previous, but then I wanted this new image to be Klein rules, right? So I go in here and I give it my prompt, which was a close-up monochromatic retro UI 8-bit LED display, and it says, Klein rules, which it does. And then I want to change up the color scheme, so I can go here and I can use different color schemes. So but this is what's great about this is I've got a lot more capability in terms of size, so I can define I'm not only defining the general capabilities like we saw in ChatGPT, I can go in there and say, well, what size do I want it, right? So I can make it so if you're using it for LinkedIn, for example, you probably want a 4:5 ratio, which fits perfectly in this sort of max size image area. So I'll choose that. Then if I want to change the model, I get different models. There's really no model better than 3. This is, in my opinion, the best model going at the moment. Then you've got magic prompt. I'm not really sure what the magic prompt is. I usually leave it on. So we've got different styles. So auto is pretty good. Realistic is obviously realistic. Design is for like graphic design style. And this does really great text. General, I'm not really sure what general does. And random is pretty obvious. You can track style codes. So if you've previously designed something like here, I can go in here and use the seed right here. I think that's what it is. I should probably do a better job of reading the documentation, but you can pop that in here and reuse the style, and then I can say create a billboard that says AI Hackerspace live. Oh, I get space twice. There we go. And what's unlike the ChatGPT, this is substantially faster. So ChatGPT takes forever to render. Now I'm going to get 4 images here in roughly about 20 seconds. So you can see I chose colors and I didn't give it a whole lot of guidance just because whatever. But I didn't give it any text either, but it looks like it's lying to me on the text. The text actually didn't work out so great this time, but generally it works pretty good. You can see here I fool around with different images. Like here's 3D images and isometric. This image turned out pretty good. I was playing with different Agentix logo ideas just to see. So I basically give it a logo and then I give it a reference, and then it gives it a kind of metallic kind of look to it, which is cool. So I can fool around with it. Anyway,
Hey,
if you're into graphic design, this is, in my opinion, the best.
hey, Roof.
Yeah.
Is there a place that you look and like kind of get inspiration or clarity on like what kind of prompt or how to prompt in on the image side? Do you use like prompt libraries to learn? Are there any resources like that you can share with us?
I've created 350,000 images. I just got a feel for it
Yeah.
at this point. You can check out my Instagram. I got tons of stuff on there if for those who are more uh, into that sort of thing. It's art. I'm just RUV on Instagram. Um, I share a lot of my prompts there as well. Is it gonna make me log in? I'm not gonna log in right now. Whatever. But yeah, I'm our Instagram RUV. But I use a lot of descriptive text, like points of view, style, design, perspective, different types of well, I guess just like lenses, things like that. Another thing we're doing, just as an FYI, we're looking to launch a ambassador program. This was Sanal's idea yesterday, and we have bots to build our stuff quickly. So we're looking to launch an ambassador program. So if you're interested in being an ambassador, really the only requirement is you're a paying member, which is like $10 anyway. And that'll give you the ability to sort of build chapters in your local area. These are currently placeholders. So I need 3 people who would willing to be an ambassador, mostly because I need to update the website with something that isn't a placeholder, and your avatar or image or whatever you want to slap in there.
I'll send you
So
the guy
yeah.
here.
Okay, so slap your name in or text me your image and your location and some one sentence line description of who you are and why and what's interesting. We get eligibility. You just need to be on the call today, apparently. So, and responsibilities. We want to throw events. Like we want to get the stuff going. We've got all these locations, and I think we're constrained mostly by the fact that I'm probably taking on too much at this point. But luckily we've got an army of people who are willing to help. So I'm going to take you guys up on your offers to help. And yeah, so this is the site. It's not linked anywhere. You'd have to go to /ambassador currently. I'll link it somewhere later. Also, just as an FYI, there's a minor, well, maybe a major error in the sign up process on the site, which I need to call Supabase to fix. So I've disabled the register with your username and password. Unfortunately, right now you're just going to have to log in and register with your GitHub or Google account. Apparently there's a trigger that I set that I can't undo in Supabase. So if anyone knows how to undo auth-based triggers, let me know, because currently the auth-based trigger is failing, which means it only works if you register with Google or OAuth, which kind of sucks. Anyway, let's do last jump. Last thing. This is the part that people were really excited about earlier. Earlier this week, I created I created a ton of stuff this week, but actually one last thing I want to show you. Check this out. The guys at Requesty are going to be on here in a minute. My bill last week was $1,200, which is, pretty decent for a week. So almost exactly a week, we're looking at 200. I spent $265 on my various usage. Let's see what models I use, and I use 3.7 in DeepSeek predominantly. And that is, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's down $1,000. So that's something like what, 90% or something. So my cost is substantially lower. So well, we're gonna let Requesty tell you exactly how they managed to drop my bill by $1,000. I'm not gonna lie, I'm curious. But I built a crazy amount of stuff this week. So the fact that it only cost me $265 is even crazier. So just to give you a quick view, I built Spark. So for those who are familiar, this is my sort of second generation of my autonomous coding system. It does a ton of stuff. Basically, it allows you to monitor your every transaction within your coding system using vectors on a multi-dimensional structure, both in terms of time and sort of what it does, sort of context. So here's an example. I'm running it. I'm running it in GPT-4. I have different models and modes. I can run it sequentially or in parallel or in concurrent modes. So as various things happen, I'm creating contextual vectors. In this case, it started. Then I run another vector saying, whether this is a brand new repository. I'm using unified diff structure, similar to the diff structure in Roo, to do a comparison of the code that's being created. Then so the system can automatically go back and look at any code that's been previously created and say, did it work? Did it fail? And if the system wants to use it, all it needs to do is grab the diff and immediately apply it, which means it's cheaper, faster, and doesn't require the LLM to even go and make an LLM request, which is kind of nice. So you can see here, I'm running it here. It's analyzing code. I'm using a EB2 code interpreter to actually run the code. So that means I'm running the code independently of my code environment, which is cool. So it means I can concurrently run multiple agents that swarm and build an application, as kind of like an ant colony building an ant colony, I guess. So you can use different types of concurrent parallel processes. I can build things in like 100 times the speed. Now, it's also 100 times more expensive, and that's why I was looking at things like Gemini 2.5. And Gemini 2.5 is essentially free at the moment. So if you use Gemini 2.5, you can. There's another way for you to save some money there.
I'm going to save you a bunch of money in a minute.
Oh, and Guy's got a an even better hack for I think for $4, which I'm very excited to hear about. Last thing. Okay, so I did a post this morning because everyone's asking how do I do my autonomous. So a couple things to look at. I'm moving fast here, so you'll have to watch the playback of the recording. Um, so I'm running. You can see here I'm running my Spark my Spark system here. I did a query, analyze the command implementation, and then I see a response. So this is querying the vector. So essentially you'll see here a similarity score. The closer you get to one, the more perfect the similarity matches when you look at vectors, right? So 7.74 is basically saying, is the code somewhat related? Well, according to the similarity search, there's a 75% relationship to it. So I'm able to essentially create a sort of agentic, RAG-based, multidimensional, temporal, distributed coding system with MCP all integrated into my client. So client acts as a kind of orchestrator for multiple agents. Each one of those agents is being run as an independent process using the OpenAI agent SDK and API. It's fast, it's cheap, and it's infinitely scalable. I was able to do thousands of these agents all running concurrently doing different things, and the price was like 25 cents. So you can also replace the GPT-4o model with any other model you want. So if you wanted to do the actual logic using, let's say, Gemini or Sonnet 3.7, you can just do that. This entire code base, which is I think close to 100,000 lines of original code built in an afternoon on the weekend, was I think the overall cost was something like $75 and completely functional. It was built using this methodology that uses testing and sort of iterative feedback, basically on autopilot. I think I've got to the point where I can literally just point these bots at my code and say, go build me this crazy thing. And I go have dinner. I come back and it's built. I think we have reached the age of a completely autonomous building of applications with basically nothing more than a decent plan and a test-driven development environment. All right, last thing I want to show you guys is the Rue Klein code or the Klein rules. When you're in your Rue or Klein, and I think Cursor has something called Cursor rules, which is almost exactly the same. You can put a file called .klein rules. This ends up being one of the most important parts of any automated component. It tells the system how to sort of automate the parts. So last week I was showing you guys this idea when you go into Rue and you can sort of set up these automated execution commands. So that's important, but this actually allows you to sort of tell it what your preferences are, how, which linter, what testing and all, how to execute the MCPs. Without this, it's a wild mess. The MCPs fail half the time. This seems to be the magic piece to make a lot of this stuff work. Check out the LinkedIn post I did this morning if you want to copy and paste it. I'll publish this to the repo here in a bit. Now you got to do a little more testing. But you can see here there's file triggers. Here are the terminal commands. Here are the commands I don't want it to run. Here's my MCP related commands. You see my analyze, my modify and search and pass for uploading files. Everything, all the settings here. The great thing is I can actually get Rue or Klein to actually create this file for me or even optimize it based on the particulars of the thing I'm building. So I change it up for every project based on the requirements of that project. But if 100,000 lines of code completely functional is any indication, it works pretty good. All right, I'm done.
Rue, do you still use a normal prompt in Klein or Rue code?
I use plans. Yeah, so I create detailed plans step by step, and those plans guide the system. So let me actually, if you guys want one more minute, I was trying to end early today, but let me just show you quick. So you see here, I built a few different things. The benchmark system is probably the best example I built using this. So the first thing I did is I created the Spark system, right? It's substantial. There's a lot of stuff in here, right? I got CLIs and diffs and MCPs and sandboxes and vectors, all of which is organized nice and cleanly, again, in the agent structures and all that sort of stuff. So again, huge project. But I need to benchmark it, right? So to create a benchmark, what I did is I went and created a plan. So before I built anything, I switched to thinking mode in Sonnet 3.7 thinking medium because it's a nice balance between being too expensive and too long. Then I tell it to basically create a detailed implementation plan that I can implement phase by phase. So this is the overview. Current implementation, it uses a metrics collector and various things, and then I guide it through it. And then that creates the entire system. And again, this was what you're looking at is completely autonomous development. Like other than the plan, which I'm basically using ChatGPT or Sonnet 3.7 to create based on the other code, I set it and I go off and do something else for a few hours and I come back. This benchmarking tool, which is substantial as well, is was built. Let's see here. Yeah, which README am I looking at? Yeah, this was built for under $5 and took about an hour or so, and I had very little involvement for me. So it's a CLI. It can do all the benchmarking to prove that my system works, and I can test different types of step marks. I can integrate it with various types of evaluation frameworks, SWE bench and stuff like that. Anyway, set and forget. That's my buzzword for today. All right.
Are you using cowboy mode? Like, is that essentially what you do? You go straight up like when you leave for dinner?
No, yeah, well, it's cowboy mode, but now I'm using a Roo for it and Spark 2.0. I'm not calling it cowboy mode anymore because the guys at RA were not happy with me using their cowboy mode term.
Gotcha.
Okay, if that's a problem, I won't call it cowboy mode. I'll call it cowgirl mode. How's that? Okay. I don't know why they were really upset when I called it cowboy mode. I gave them credit. I don't know why they got so upset about that, but anyway.
Hey, a quick question about the code bases. Like, which kind of programming languages have you tried this against?
I tried it using Python, Rust, TypeScript, JavaScript, and Java. Straight up Java. And funny enough, it works great for Java. I had a rant yesterday, which I'm going to repeat just briefly. Anyone that was on the call for the live coding session, Python's one of the worst freaking languages for automated coding. And one of the reasons why is, the indents and the blank space within Python counts as tokens and usage. And it's always the thing that breaks. So when you're using an automated system and using diffs, you're always running into the same general problems with Python. It's the fact that those indents aren't quite right. There's an extra space, there's an extra indent somewhere that is too much or too little, and then it breaks and you have to do the whole thing again. When you use languages that aren't like indented like Python, it's cheaper. You're not paying for blank space. Remember, blank space in an LLM input and output costs, right? It counts towards your token usage. So if you're paying for something that isn't even there, and it's the thing that breaks. So if you are building things autonomously, the reason why you see me building a lot more using TypeScript and languages that don't use indents is that reason, right? It's more efficient. I have less breakage, and I get from zero to functional more quickly. Now, there's always reasons to use Python, but for the most part, if you're building something net new and there's no module that you need to import that happens to be explicitly Python, avoid Python. It's also slow and cumbersome. There, my rant's over.
So, do you prefer Dino for the backend, like as you've been currently doing?
So I like Dino, but there's the drawback to Dino. So the best part of Dino is the explicit nature of the security and the rules and how it's how it's executed. So you have to explicitly allow for file operations or network access or whatever, which is great for an agent, right? Because the agent acts as a self-contained sandbox, right? So if you don't want it to have access to the file system, you literally just don't run it with file system access, and it inherently doesn't get it. Now, that's great for security, but the problem is the AI doesn't quite understand how Dino works. So there's often an issue where you have to kind of repeatedly tell it how to explicitly allow the agent to actually gain access to things like the network or a .env file. So the drawback to Dino is you're going to have to do some more prompt engineering to tell it how it needs to use Dino, because it just isn't. It's changed. Dino's changed how its permissions work over the last couple of versions. So whatever the sort of versions of Gemini and GPT-4 and Sonnet were trained on, they were apparently trained on older versions of it, which causes some problems. But once you get beyond that, it's, in my opinion, the best place and mechanism to create serverless functions or agents. It's by far the fastest. I can create a Dino agent that starts in 30 milliseconds. That same agent that I built in Python takes, sometimes 1 or 2 seconds, and that's if I've optimized the server to not load anything else. And if it isn't optimized, a cold start could be like 10 to 15 seconds. So we're talking 10 to 15 seconds, no optimization, versus 30 milliseconds with no optimization.
Would you consider Rust with the bottom edge as a method of building agents?
The problem with Rust is you have to compile it. So once you've compiled it, it's fast. It's probably as fast as TypeScript, but the compilation process, 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, I could have built the damn thing 5 times over, and I'm still waiting for it to compile just to discover there's an error, and then I got to wait another 20 minutes to fix that error. So the time it takes to compile a Rust application, defeats the purpose of the speed that you get for actually operating it. So I need both the compilation time to be fast and the execution time to be fast. Rust, great for execution, abysmal at compilation.
Hey, Roof, but what about just optimizing after you've done developing? Just tell the model to like convert the code to Rust.
Well, yeah, you can get, that's a good point. So you could use a test-driven development approach where you're not doing directly doing the compilation, but you're doing the tests and running against the tests, and then doing a final compilation once the tests all pass. That is the logic. That's a pretty good way to do it too.
And maybe even better way is just don't convert the entire agent to Rust, but just like run the profiler and use the output and like identify the slow pieces and then convert just those to Rust.
Or you could just use TypeScript and it just does that without any fuss.
Maybe.
Yeah. I like this. I'm lazy. I like simple and easy and cheap. And Rust is not necessarily simple or easy. It's cheap and it's fast once it's compiled. I don't know, just my opinion. I'm sure. I mean, if someone else has a different opinion, I'm certainly willing to hear it. That's been my experience with it.
And just to confirm, Rube, if we're gonna fire up Spark 2.0, we need an EB2 account.
If we're using the analogy of, I've been using the sort of karate analogy lately, and I'm not saying I'm Mr. Miyagi or anything, but that is at black belt. If you're starting out, Spark 2 right now is alpha, and it's super complicated. Now it's complicated in terms of what it does, and I probably need to simplify its interface. So if you're just getting going, it's not ready for novice users yet. This is meant to be like the art of the possible. Like, what's the most complex, difficult thing I could possibly build for coding? That's what I was attempting to build. Now I need to try to make an interface for it to make it simpler and easier. If you do decide to give it a spin, you're going to need an EB2 API key. Start with the scripts examples folder. I created a bunch of scripts that just run independently of MCP. That's probably the quickest way to get up and running with it. And there's a CLI, which is also probably another easy way to get up and running with it. But again, it's not simple, unfortunately. I'll work on making it more simple.
Cool. And I posted the link to the fungibility article on the optimization of the roux and the Klein rules. It's in the chat there.
Yeah, that's where you want to focus. I think if you guys can optimize and create self-creating, loops in roux, there's nothing you can't build. Literally, I don't think I'm
between that and Requesty, we're on fire.
Yeah, I think the key here again, tests. If there's anything if there's anything I can suggest for you guys is create a detailed plan and create tests, unit tests. And those tests feed back into Rust, or sorry, Rust, Rue, and then every failure or problem, and there's always going to be problems, get automatically fixed. And then as they're fixed, it moves on to the next test. And by the time the tests are all 100% coverage, your app works.
It's effectively the reward function
It is.
for reinforcement learning.
Yeah. All right. Well, this sounds like a great transfer, Guy. Good to see you. And for those who don't know Guy and I worked together at Citrix in the R&D lab. And what was our job? Basically to dream up the future. And I think we did, except it was actually successfully used by every other company other than ours.
That's pretty close.
Yeah. Take it away, Guy.
Oh, you want me to show? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I've been, trying to do local AI and it works okay, but using the bigger models is always a better deal. So let me share my screen real quick so I can find it. Okay. So I did a little article on this, but basically at a high level, if you use Root Code, Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and Visual Code, you get access to all of these models for $4 a month. That's Claude 3.5 Sonnet, Gemini 2.0 Flash, GPT 4.0, 01, 03 Mini, 3.5, 4.0, and 4. It's huge cost saving. So you just have to enable it in your VS Code setup. So as an example, in my root code setup, if you just go in here, oops, why this is in my way. Basically, there's this API provider called VS Code LM API. And if you select that, what that does is it gives you access to everything in Copilot. Other than, I will say, the 3.7 models don't work. I've tried all of the models and I can use them locally. So I set up a coding Copilot one, and I set up a planning Copilot one, which uses Gemini Flash. And this gives you 5,000 API calls per hour for the $4 license. You can't beat this anywhere. That's not tokens, that's API calls. And if you actually buy the enterprise version, you get 15,000 API calls per hour, and you get, it doesn't train on your code. So pretty amazing. So, I can use this, pick code mode, etc., and do whatever I want, like,
And Guy, just as an FYI, there was a report about 3 weeks ago on our subreddit that when you use that particular setting in like a fully autonomous mode, accounts were being banned. So be careful. They've got some kind of like tripwire or something for like autonomous use, and it'll like literally ban your GitHub account, and then you get to go through a whole rigmarole to get it unbanned. There's a whole bunch of people that went and did it when I did that post on what was it? Yeah, Reddit. It was about a month ago. So yeah, and they are all like were really pissed, and they thought that I'm the one that made them do it. So just be careful.
I'll be careful. I haven't hit a limit on it yet, and
it seems fine when you're just going back and forth, but the problem is when you have it like running, autonomously for an hour. Yeah, they think it's like you're up to no good or whatever.
So wait, Guy, where did you sign up for this? This was just a GitHub Copilot account?
You do a pay for GitHub Copilot account. I think if you do the free account, they may ban you. Yeah. But if you pay for the $4 a month account, I don't think you get banned. But
no, these guys were paid accounts.
Oh, so this is a pro version.
Yeah, just be careful.
Yeah, and so I've built tools with this, obviously. So, Prodigy is for me to help me switch between projects because, like Rue, I have way too many projects. But the cool part about this is I can say, hey, I want to go code my filter project. And that'll actually, if I have an instance of Visual Code Studio open with that open, it'll find it and switch me to it. So I can switch contacts like that. I can create a new repo, etc. And it's pretty handy that way. But that's all I wanted to show today.
That's awesome. Well, how'd you do the switching thing?
I basically used the API for Visual Code to find which one had the project. So I pointed AI at it and said, "Hey, figure this out." It also will switch between coding windows. So if I go and do that's my AI server. Sorry, it's not the right one. So if I say I want to work on my financial project, so I can say project CD Finney. Now, if there's an Xterm window open, it'll find it and open it. If there's not, it'll open it for me in that directory. And then it uses something called during env to switch the environment. Anytime you CD into the directory, it actually does a Python environment switch. And so it's set up to code in either Node or Python currently. But super cool,
awesome.
super useful. The next step I want to do is have it actually organize all my windows. So if I have supporting materials and open in browsers, etc., that it switches that context for me as I switch between all these projects. And cool things like if I forgot to sync my projects, I can basically go, hey, sync all my projects or check my projects. Oops.
I think one cool thing which we could do on top of this is just like branching. Let's say like we have a dev branch and another branch. Usually in large projects, there'll be a significant diff. This would be really super cool on projects where we can link the diffs accurately and the LLM has context on the different branch. I mean, I usually just copy paste it, but this would be an amazing thing. Looks awesome.
So this just tells me I've been working on this one, and it needs to be committed. If I hit sync, it would actually do the GitHub repo push to the master repo and stuff. So anyways, thanks for the time. Hopefully saved you guys some money.
You publish your Prodigy code anywhere?
I can. Right now I was pretty selfish about it and just had it designed to work on Mac OS. So if people want to extend it,
yeah. I'm sure we could vibe code our way into a Windows and Linux version. And you bring up an interesting point, and I've been getting some pushback and some of the stuff that literally only works for me. And this is something I want to mention. Like the stuff that I share is literally only built for me, right? It's and the same way that you just described that we built that for you. And I share it because I can, but it's not built necessarily for others. It's built for, and that's something that I think some folks need to sort of understand when it comes to open source. I just build because I can. I'm not building for any other reason, just to learn something new. And whether it works for someone else is sometimes a kind of secondary thought for me. Maybe that's because I'm selfish in some weird way, but I don't know.
But if you think back when the decision was, hey, I wish I could automate that, but it would take too long to automate it. And now the price model or the effort required to do that is inverted. So making custom tools is extremely inexpensive. And so everyone should be doing that for their personal work processes to accelerate development. Like I have this problem where I had 30 terminals open and 30 Visual Code Studio things open, and I couldn't find them. And so that just fixed my own problem, right?
It kind of reminds me of like the computer clubs back in like when I was a kid in the 80s. And when you wanted software, there was basically two ways to do it. You had three ways. You could buy it. I had no money. I was a kid. You could get shareware, which were these discs that you got in the mail, and then you can install software that other people created to solve their own problems, and they were hacked together. And then there were these like computer clubs of geeks that would get together and hack together software just for their own purposes. And back in like, this is for me is 1988, so it's 10 years old, and I created a BBS. And the reason I created the BBS and took up my parents' modem and whatnot was literally because I didn't have any money to create software for my Tandy computer. So I used the BBS to connect to other geeks in the town that I lived in, and we would collaborate on creating software, which we basically stole from the shareware disks that we were being sent in the back of the PC World magazine. But it feels a little bit like that again, if I'm going back in time and showing my age.
Awesome.
Anyway, thanks,
No,
guy.
no.
Thanks, Guy.
It brings a thought, no, like the greatest games in this world came from pirated, because gamers are pirating games and doing amazing stuff. It's just, yeah, we are sharing ideas and knowledge. It's just people just has to take the idea from an idea perspective and just be happy and innovate on top of it. Because I think people in this age takes too many things granted. So gotta deal with it.
I like the way you think. You know, let's tell that to Metallica so they don't sue me again. But anyway,
Right.
who do we
Now
got
you're turning
next?
back the clock again, Rube.
I know. I'm still freaking. I was on a podcast the other day, and the guy's like, "You're basically the Forrest Gump of tech. If you look somewhere in the background, you were there. You were never in the foreground." I think that was a compliment, possibly.
Awesome.
I don't know who my Jenny is. I guess my wife. Anyway,
Well, we have
who do
we have a little switch up. So it's Thibault, one of the co-founders from Requesty, is going to be doing the demo for us today. Hey, Thibault, how are you?
Good. How's everyone?
Great. Yeah, and I'm excited to see what you know. I've been using you guys for a week. Did you see the earlier my little demo there? You guys have cut my costs by $1,000, $1,000, and give or take, I put out close to 250,000 lines of code this week.
Wow.
Just shy. Yeah. So I want to know how you did it.
Amazing. Well, let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Today's demo is about the root code integration we have that you mentioned. We've added a really cool quick button. So if you install root code for the first time, you just can click on Requesty. Boom, it gets you redirected. We have a little surprise. We've done a whole new platform. Does everyone want to see that, or old platform?
Yeah.
Let's go to the new. This is the new platform. So if everything goes wrong, that's fine. It's the new platform. But basically, you use OAuth to authenticate, one click, and it should just authorize root code. I click that, it's authorizing, and it should bring me back to Visual Studio Code. There we go. All seamless so far. What I'm going to do is just say, hey, code me a snake game in one Python file, just for the test. Hope it works. And it seems to be working. So the integration is very quick and easy, as you can see. The benefit of using Requesty with root code is that you can just come here and you'll see all of the different models that we serve. So if you want to use the latest Gemini model, you can just use it straight away from the list with about 200 models. And you can play around with that while root code is coding for you, which is the best part of it. If I go back to the platform, we still need to click a button here, but this is the new platform, by the way. Let's see what you guys think about it. But we've just spent 7 cents on that one request. We can see the latency, the request volume. We can see the actual logs, but I'm going to go into the API keys. So you can see the root code API key here. And what's really cool is that you have this configure button. You can create both fallback policies because, you know, Anthropic can be down. So an idea of a fallback policy could be, I want to use Anthropic 3.7 as my model, and I want to add another model, and let's do 3.5. And basically, if you create this policy, it will basically go to the first model. If we get an error, it will straight away go to the second one, so that you're always online, always getting a response. Now, for how we can actually save cost is we enforce caching, but we also have other really cool features such as the root code custom prompt. So Gosu Coder is another coder and very active on root code. He made a custom prompt that you can enable yourself just by a click here, but you can also set your own custom prompt. And what will happen is Requesty will overwrite the prompt, system prompt from root code for you. So you don't have to put that in rules, you just configure that in the UI. Now, we saw here 7 cents on the first request. So if we can go back here in root code we have our Python game here in Python, our snake game. I'm just gonna delete that. And I wonder what's gonna happen with, let me see here, what's gonna happen with the new prompt that we just instructed. So we had 7 cents before. Let's see what happened now. Oh, it wants to do a Friday demo. Let's approve 0.042. And it is writing code. Amazing. And let us go back to Requesty. And the benefit of Requesty is that everything is in the logs. You can turn off the logs for privacy reasons if you don't want to send them to us. But let's just see if he's still coding or not. He is still coding. We can go to the first request that we did was about 7 cents, as we can see, 12,000 tokens, 10,000 input tokens, and 1,900 output tokens. If I refresh here, what do we see? 4 cents. So 3,600 tokens, a lot more output tokens, but the input tokens dramatically changed. So we went from 10,000 input tokens to 1,100 input tokens with a new prompt. So that's the benefit of being able to customize and configure your system prompt with real code, is that you can dramatically impact those amount of tokens, and that should reflect in your analytics. And we've added a new cool dashboard, which is the savings, which is basically what you're saving if you're using caching. We're not caching yet because I only did the request. So if I do improve the code, it should use caching. And if we see the cache here, maybe I was not quick enough to use the cache, but you get our point. The main goal is reducing your costs while you are coding. Any questions, feedback?
It works. I like it. Totally works. There's one thing that you probably need to do to improve it further. I created a symbolic caching system, like or optimization system called Synthlang. I added that, and I'm able to get it up to 95% savings using that now. And you should add something like, you should just add my Synthlang. It'll dramatically improve that even further. And I went into your prompt options, and I just added my my prompt that basically said use symbolism for sort of hyper optimization of the code structure, and it's just magically worked, which was amazing. So yeah.
Where can we find that prompt?
You can go to my Synthlang project. It's a whole. And I actually attempted to create a proxy a while back, so you can see my proxy implementation. But you should totally use it. Here's the. I'm gonna put it in the chat. You can see my optimization, and it works really well. And so that's how I was able to get your system up from initially it was about 50% reduction in cost. I was able to get it up to about 90-ish% reduction in cost. It's crazy, like really well done. You guys are going to be. If the company we had last week just announced a $7 million funding round, I think yours is going to be. I think you guys are going to be 70 million, way more valuable. Sorry. I like those other guys too, but you guys just saved me $1,000 in a week. So what more can I ask?
Best friends forever.
Yes, exactly.
Would you expect?
What do you think of the? Yeah.
Sorry, would you expect the model providers to eventually provide caching? Because
they do. But the caching provide like OpenAI currently offers direct caching, right? And you don't have to enable it. Sonnet Sonnet or Claude, you have to enable the flag to get the caching, but it doesn't benefit the amount of tokens being sent as part of the system prompt and the initial request is what. So what these guys have done, and I'm talking for you guys momentarily here, but you guys have taken that and made it magic. It just kind of works without me having to worry about why or how.
So Martin, we enforce the Anthropic caching manually behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about it. Anthropic, you need to specify what you want to cache and when, and we just do it based on your usage, based on your behavior. So we try to optimize that as much as possible. We get to 80 or 83%, not yet 90. So we're gonna use your prompt and try to get it up to 90.
You're more than welcome to take the whole thing. Obviously I build this stuff because You know, and for those that are interested, you can check that link, and there's a playground or a translate section, and you can see how I translate a 1200 token prompt down to like, yeah, I don't know, it's like 100 tokens or something.
So how do you
and
currently use it with requesting before they have integrated it?
Oh, okay. Here, let me show you. Again, this is what I did. So here, let me share my screen quick. So this is the UI I created just to show how the thing works. So quickly, I go in here. I'm creating a prompt. This prompt is essentially creating a Node.js app. So you can see the original tokens. I'm gonna let that run for a minute. And then there's a system prompt. This is it. So I'm basically converting the text into a logo graphic structure. You know, using I didn't go crazy. I kept it pretty simple. I didn't want to make it more verbose than it needed to be. We can go in here. You can optimize it further if you want to use different characters. You know, if you want Mandarin or Japanese or Arabic or whatever language you want. So you can use super optimizations and choose what characters you want. But generally, the default's probably the best. This is what I get the best results from. And then just to see it here, it's still I'm using a cheap model here, but I'm going to just go ahead and hopefully it's almost done. And so you can see its entire app, right? And I can then translate this entire application into this structure. I'm not sure why it's going so slow today, but let's just go and let's hit translate now and see what happens. All right, so I'm taking this entire 1200 tokens or whatever it is, and then I've condensed it down to this structure. So I'm encapsulating the information, but I'm encapsulating it in symbolism. Now this is an 87% reduction in this particular example. Now to prove that works, all we needed, and I actually did it before it was done, but we can go here to ChatGPT, and without me giving it any prompt at all, it'll recognize the structure, and and we'll go. Well, let's use just a fast model. I'll use GPT-4. I'll put it. It recognizes it inherently. Crazy, right? This is what you call a emergent capability of a language model. I can't tell you why that works. I love to tell you why it works. I have absolutely no idea, but it does.
Can you take databases or entire files and have it convert it like that too?
Yeah. So when you're using a vector,
it's just like
when you're
extra
using
token, right?
When you're using a vector, you can encapsulate your vector information in the synthlang format, and you take what's verbose and huge, and you can get in some cases down to 98% reduction in the overall size. It works particularly well for vectors for exactly that, and the similarity aspect of the vectors maintains. So when you're searching for it, even though it's not in English, it still figures out what is needed. Anyway, I copied that into Requestee's prompt option. Actually, if I'm gonna let Thibaut go.
Which LLMs does this work with? Like you used it now. Okay.
All of them, yeah. So actually, just as a quick example here, if you go in, I used Open Router, but I'm going to switch this if I have time. I'm going to switch this to Requestee. But if you go here to the settings, you can see the different models. I just ran that in Sonnet 3.7, but here's all the models. Every model that's on Open Router, and you can choose what your default model is. You can, I've got Playground. If you want to test it further, you can play around with it. Yeah, and you can just try it. Boom, and this actually it'll self-validate. So this acts as a validation of the. So this is the original one. This is the the output, and then this translates it back. So I'm basically kind of like Google Translate for neurosymbolic reasoning. It also lets you hack any LLM, by the way, but don't do anything stupid with that. It bypasses pretty much every guardrail. Guardrails are built usually in natural language, right? So symbolic reasoning bypasses the natural language guardrails.
So how do you use it yourself? Like do you use your own interface on the web, or like do you use it directly from command line as an automated process, like when you're doing?
I put it in my prompt. I put it in the prompt. So in up until Requesty showed up, I would put it in my root code prompt, and then it would basically reformulate its internal thinking process using my compression, and that works. I don't know why it worked. It just works. And so when the Requesty guys showed up, I saw a little button that said use your own prompt. I just popped it in there.
Very neat. We've got just enough time, Ruve, to have Joseph for his lightning talk, and then we can go to the open format. Craftsman, is that okay if we hold on to your question until the open format part? Awesome. Okay. Joseph, you all set?
Yep.
Hey, hey.
Hey, everyone. My name's Joe. I'm from Synaptic Labs. I am a vibe coder like probably most of you, and a proselytizer of Obsidian, which is a note-taking app that is amazing and allows you to pull from a lot of community plugins that, there's sort of base functionality in Obsidian, but then there's all these nice little plugins you can get that do fun things. And I would highly recommend, if you are a vibe coder like myself, start in Obsidian, make your own plugins, because it's actually fairly simple and straightforward. There's pretty good documentation. And especially if you don't want to deal with like front end stuff or really even back end stuff, like everything's kind of built for you to already use. So along those lines, I also want to proselytize MCPs, as I know this group has been doing for a few weeks now. People still don't really understand how incredible this thing is. And I think it's super important that we are all hopping on this bandwagon, because I don't know about you all, I'm so sick of everyone coming up with their own like standard for all this agent stuff. Like, let's all agree on one thing that's interoperable. So I absolutely love the MCP. And one of the things I really wanted to do was create an MCP that's accessible to people who have no idea how to code or use any of this stuff by just turning into a plugin. So this is literally something, right, that you're going to stick in, the folder, your Obsidian folder, and we're going to see it gives you this this quick little setup. You go to show configuration, you copy this, you open that, and there you go. It's going to be ready and logged in for you to have your tools to control your Obsidian. Now, one thing I want to mention is I think we're starting to actually move towards actual like natural language programming. Like we're slowly getting there where we can abstract away the actual code. And one way, I think is really important to show is how do we sort of have this notes database, right? Where the note itself can act as a prompt or guide for the LLM to do actions rather than me having to code the action by using an MCP with sort of those atomic tools that I can string together, right? So as an example of this, we have just these normal tools. It can edit a note, read a note. It can generate text. It can search your vault. It can move things around. Those are the atomic tools, right, that we use. And then I have this little project manager, which I'm hoping it'll work when I show you guys. The idea being similar to like the plan mode in Klein or Rue or whatever, right? Have it plan something first, and then also have a checkpoint tool within this toolbox so that it doesn't like just keep going and going and going and doing like more stuff than you asked it to do. So it can plan out, hit that checkpoint, and kind of check in with you. So one of the first things I have this do in its prompt, which I can bring up in a second, is I wanted to find this file and read it first of all. And the idea is you have this map of contents file, which tells you a little bit about whomever. It has this to, help you navigate the vault. You can have the plugins that it has access to and any sort of instructions. So for example, I think I have, project management. Whenever I ask you to start a project, right, I want you to follow these rules. And then you have all these templates, for example, So if I wanted to make a map of content for a folder, this is just a prompt, right? That it goes and fills in. If I wanted to create a project, it's just a prompt that it fills in. So we can do something as simple as like create a project for my coding efforts on something called Cloudsidian. That is a plugin for Obsidian to use an MCP server. Let's see if this actually works. One of the things I've been working really hard on is like how vague can you be with this thing and it still do what you want it to do. And of course, Claude is going to crash when I'm trying to show you guys this. So let's
Guaranteed. In the vagueness,
guaranteed in the demo.
guaranteed. The vagueness is my problem. I struggle with a consistent mechanism to execute or invoke the MCP.
Yes, and prompting is the key. And again, like the navigation of the notes so it can prompt itself is like super key. So you'll see here, I actually have a project that is specific to the vault. And again, pretty much all the prompt says is like, go look at this file first. Okay, let's see if this works again. Create a project for an Obsidian plugin that connects to an MCP server. I'm also hoping I don't actually have this project in here already, but let's see. Okay, so you guys have probably all seen this before, but it's listening, right? It's going and reading my map of contents. It found the project template. It's looking at the project MOC. So it's also looking at, oh, is there already a project here? It's searching to see if there's any information about MCP servers. It is finding the documentation I have for MCP servers. Now it's going to go, do all of its research and stuff.
This is my issue with MCP, right? It's like, why did it need to do so much freaking research when it could have just executed the damn thing in the first step?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
It's an overachiever.
It's like, I don't want to burn $2 just to discover that it needs to run the certain command that I told it to do in the first place.
But these tools aren't incentivized financially to reduce that request time, right? They make money per request. And so I don't
But
see
not in
that.
this case, right? Like, because I'm just using the Claude desktop app. So I'm not getting charged additional for running this right now.
I think it's just more on APIs for production applications. This is a really good, cool use case for personal people in the given context. But if we want to build it for customers, this is a very expensive operation. It would probably cost us probably a buck or two, and do it 1,000 times. We're broke.
Well, not if you're using the Klein rules or cursor rules. That's sort of solves that problem. So, but if you're building an agent for a customer, you don't need MCP. You've got direct API access anyway. So this is like this kind of intermediary use case, right? That's what's weird about MCP. I like the fact that you've got the sort of, HTTP protocol as well as the output of the terminal that you can use. I got a question for you. Are you using any of the new SSE capabilities that came out recently?
No, is that the parallelization?
It's exactly what it is. And it came out, I think, last week. And it's something I've been playing with a lot. So when you're using the MCP, one of the challenges you have, especially with sort of long running processes, is it's got a really short timeout on it. And sometimes these things take, minutes to execute, right? Deep research, for example. If you invoke the SSE capability, what that does, it allows for an incremental reporting of what's happening back to the chat client. So you could do a stepped response. I started the process, which is stops that timeout from happening. And then 30 seconds later, it says, I'm still working on it. And then 2 minutes later, it might say I've completed, or it could just be like a CLI style output that gives you a step-by-step along the way. But it's a really nice, easy way to solve some of the timeout issues.
Yes, I haven't been able to look into it yet, but I was very excited to see that because even this, right, is too sequential. Like it could have been doing all that research, for example, and I have to get it to use this tool more. There's a batch read tool where it just like reads everything at once, right? Like it doesn't need to be doing all of this sequentially. It could be doing multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to do with my Spark example, was the idea of concurrency and parallelism within the structure of an MCP. So you're making, so the UI, like what you're showing, acts as the kind of central orchestrator, and then it can sort of spawn sub threads, if you will, that execute independently and then report back when they're done.
Mhm.
This is awesome, by the way. I love this.
Yeah. So, and one of the things, like, we're all in it again. So we're like, this is so cool, like, and so easy to like throw these things together. Like, no one outside this group really understands like that we're here, that we've like arrived at this stage. Like, even me showing this to people, they still can't like quite wrap their head around it. This is another issue since it's so verbose, right? It always like runs out of its time.
Oh,
So
that's use the vector. That solves that problem. So the vector acts as the short-term and long-term memory, and then you can just basically clear your cache with the if you use the OpenAI SDK, it takes you like 2 minutes to get that up and running.
Yeah, I will definitely look into that in the parallelization. But again, the idea is like people can't access this stuff yet. Like, it's super easy for us, but I really want people to like start using this stuff and understand and be able to actually kind of just program in natural language, because that's where we're moving. And it's a lot more accessible than it ever has been if you're just given sort of the right tools. So the next phase of this project is I'm actually trying to build out an application that is sort of the Omni MCP, where you can call into it from anywhere just through a function call. And then you just add all your APIs, your webhooks, your databases, whatever it might be, right into an interface. And then you just have your one-stop shop. You can kind of access it from anywhere as long as, you have the password. So
I was finding deploying AI inside a corporation, what worked is I did a half-day training session on, what is AI and what are the limits of the models and inference and all that kind of stuff. And then give them a half day to do a coding hackathon. And then that tool that I pointed you to, Ruve, that does a code count and looks at the time that it would take and or the cost. And that seems to open people's eyes and go, hey, we can actually use this to get real work done. But without actually experiencing it and kind of understanding the rough edges, people dismiss it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
just quickly, I saw a question in the chat. So how to use templates? You treat them like a prompt, right? So I said, I want you to make a memory, and it knows based on another prompt I had, I need to find the memory template, I need to fill out a memory, and then I need to stick it in my memories folder. And the idea here is to actually support in the future fine tuning a model, right? So I'm trying to format sort of the conversation in a reduced way, showing the human, the assistant, and the tool use to help eventually fine tune a model so that we don't even need to run it on this stuff, right? You just get a pretty good 12 billion parameter model, just run it locally. It can do 90% of what you need to do.
You know what you should do? Use the dspy library and make it JSON-L. And then the benefit to that is it'll run locally, but you can also take the JSON-L and then fine tune any model. They all use JSON-L, right, for fine
Yep.
tuning. You're good to go.
Yeah, so actually, I have another Obsidian plugin that is a synthetic data generator, and that's exactly what it does. Is like after it's done, you can press a button, it converts everything into a JSON-L, so you can easily just upload it to Hugging Face or whatever, do some unsloth, have your way with it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you're killing you're killing it. They don't call you Dr. Dre. I mean Doctor for nothing.
And I'm not even a doctor, guys. This is Professor Synapse over here. He's our AI avatar, and so he's the doctor.
You're doctor to me. You know, if Dr. Dre can be a doctor, then you can be a doctor.
Well, thanks all for your time. I'm gonna, so you guys can use this right now. I'm gonna stick the GitHub in here. It's literally just you create like a folder in your Obsidian Vault under plugins called Cloudsidian MCP. You toss the files in there, and it'll just work, hopefully.
Now, what I don't know, maybe someone else on the call might know, if the Claude desktop client supports server sent events yet. I'm gonna go on a limb and say it probably doesn't, but maybe. But the Rue definitely does. So that's cool. So you're testing this all just in the desktop client?
Yes, for now. But again, the idea is like, I want you to be able to just essentially, it's a tool itself. Like, it's just a question tool, and it sends it off, right, to wherever you want to send it, from wherever you're sending it into a central location, and it can do all the things.
That's cool. There's so many things we could do with it. I'm struggling for enterprise use cases, like Guy mentioned. It's like there sometimes the simpler solution might be the better solution when it comes to enterprises. Like the MCP seems useful for things where you're technical and you want a nice clean abstraction. But I'd say for like 90% of use cases, especially with enterprise, just build the function hook directly into whatever app you've already built. What difference does it make?
So I think it's named weird, right? Because I think what their intent was with MCP, Model Context Protocol, was to allow you to access your private data in an LLM that hasn't trained on your private data. Yet people are using it for tool use because it really invokes a method and returns something. And so it's got this weird, I don't know, birthright or whatever. I find that the tools built into like Root-Klein or Root Code um, are sufficient, right? It can web browse and I can use the command prompt. I can do everything else from that.
Well, you know what else you could do, and this is something I don't know if we still have the guys from Requesty on, but if we could induce the same function by basically having sort of like a parser. So let's say we use a hashtag or something that's unique, and as part of the request, all we really need to do if we want to invoke an MCP on the proxy, let's say that the guys at Requesty want to have an MCP proxy, we'd put in something like hashtag analyze underscore code. When that is passed to the proxy, it sees that command and then could potentially execute the MCP request directly on the proxy, skipping any of the requirement for that discovery phase that we're seeing from Joe a second ago, right? And that solves a lot of the verbosity issue that we have where it takes 5 minutes for the thing to figure out how to execute the thing that it should have done in the first step, right? So it's kind of like a slash command on Discord or Slack, right? It's just a command that needs to be picked up. And that would be way faster. You could bypass the LLM altogether. A lot of these requests don't even need to hit an LLM. They just need to hit a vector or some other API service and give you a result. And that would also save you money.
Yeah, so actually, I think we talked about it when we met for the first time, and that's I think that's the direction MCP tools should go to. As in, there's no reason for people to handle all those crazy integrations on their local hosts. So we're definitely looking into ways of integrating a lot of different MCP tools into the proxy and using some directives, just like you mentioned. If anyone here is interested in collaborating on that or has an idea how it can be useful in an organization, we're more than happy to try and figure that out together.
Here, I've got a rudimentary implementation you can steal or borrow if you're interested. I attempted. I'm not gonna lie, you guys inspired me last week. I'm like, oh, geez, these guys are killing it. How in the world are they doing it? But it's nowhere near as elegant as yours. I'm not gonna lie. But basically, what I was trying to do is I created a proxy, and then I basically am executing the commands, and you can arbitrarily define the commands as long as they're not something that exists commonly in the code or things that you're passing to the proxy. And then basically it grabs that and then it sort of hijacks the request. So when it sees that you're requesting a certain hashtag or slash, it'll then redirect to a different tool and give you the result of that redirection versus the selection of Sonnet 3.7 or something.
Yeah. So I actually took a look at the code. So I guess I think the tricky part is like the parsing. If you use the hashtag convention, then it might be tricky to pass arguments. But that's definitely like a direction that we're exploring, trying to figure out how to do that.
So I think I have a solution. The hashtag thing is problematic because hashtags exist in Markdown frequently. So you can't use a hashtag because it'll confuse it with headers. You can't use slashes because any kind of JSON is going to break. So what I was thinking, and this is, you guys can tell me if I'm crazy. Back to the synthlang I was showing you earlier, we could use arbitrary, unusual symbolic references. And though when you look at the synthlang examples that I ended up choosing, those are arbitrary and uncommonly used. I wasn't going and using Mandarin characters that were common, like China or something that would be used frequently, but I was using things that were the most, unusual of the characters that would show up infrequently. And then I would add a secondary sort of command that along with the unusual command or symbol would mean it's pretty much never going to happen. So the two sort of allow it to be found and not interfere with common slashes or pound hash mark kind of things. That hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that does, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've had a great. This has been a particularly interesting session today. Anyone have any comments?
I got some really cool. I have a question, Adrian. In SafeLine, did you try to feed back into the input of it the previous output?
Yeah, well, you're talking about the translation, I think.
Yes.
Right. And the translation is the most important part. What you want is the output to be the same as semantically the same as the original input. Now, it's not going to be exactly the same. It's a translation. So, but the meaning has to remain, right? So, and the way that I went about testing it was I did a similarity-based sort of search, I guess you'd say, on that information, and then I used DSPY to optimize it to a point where I got sort of coherence in both the input and the response. And when I got to around 90%, it basically didn't make any difference. So even though it was different, like the input wasn't exactly the same, or the output wasn't exactly the same as the original input, the meaning remained. Like when I showed you guys the example earlier, the folder structure was still the same folder structure. The instructions were still the same instructions. They were just described slightly differently, but not enough to directly affect the implementation of the code or whatever it is I was doing with it. We're in crazy land, I think, at this point, but anyway.
Can I show you something cool, Rube?
Sure. What have you been vibing?
So last time I showed you like what I was working on, but I made it like way cooler now. All right, so we got to where we're going to plot on Neo4j. So I'm going to run the analyzer, and it's going to plot the entire code base in the Neo4j. And I got the cross-functional thing working. 1 second, let me just get it so it plots on the graph.
Can I show a demo after you about guard rates?
Yeah. The more vibe, the better, if you ask me.
And while we're waiting, just want to give a shout out to Requesty. I think it was our first foundation purchase, so we are customers.
Okay, so it's analyzing all the files, and then it's plotting them. It's also creating embeddings and a whole bunch of cool stuff like that.
So what exactly are you doing? Like you're creating embeddings for what purpose?
All of the functions, the files, the methods are getting embedded for my semantic search tools. I built a whole tool set for utilizing this Neo4j graph. Let's see here. All right, so we've got everything, the entire code base here, let's say, plotted in the Neo4j, right? And then we can use the tools that I created to query this for whatever purpose we need. And I kind of built a set of instructions so that it uses these tools in a way that humans would use to solve complex problems. But some of the tools it has available to it is it can look for circular dependencies. It can pull entire dependency trees. It can look for the nodes that have most connected nodes. It can find complex files, find fan in and fan out nodes. And then like the big thing is that it can pull context on nodes. So like when I want to go edit a file or a node, I can say, let's see, there's like a file here. We'll just run the node context tool on parser.ts file.
I'm surprised you haven't added an MCP interface to this.
I'm still like working on it, but it should run the tool on this, and then it'll give you a complete context. It'll tell you everything that is connected to this file's node, and then everything 2 hops out from it too. is what it was doing. I changed it around and it seems to have an error now because I was like playing with it. But, and then there's also like a code overbase tool that gives me a complete readout of like an overview of the entire code. But essentially it's taken the Neo4j graph and I've just built a bunch of tools. And like you can see, these are like files, functions, variables. The green are the variables, the blue are the functions, the yellow or the pink are the files, brown are the directories. And you can see how everything is connected and how it's connected cross file wise with each other. And then I just built a bunch of tools that use this information to give you.
This is Python?
No, this is TypeScript right now.
Okay.
Is what it's set up as.
Did you publish this on a Git somewhere?
No, but I'm going to. But it's like I want to make it so it works a lot better, so other people can easily just use it. I'm been refining it. I've been working on it. It's just some few things that I need fixed to put it on.
Yeah, it's like I just put it out there, and then people complain and I fix it up.
Well, maybe I should do that. I'll just do that today then. And,
it's never if it's fully baked, I spend too much time on it.
Okay. Well,
I think what you've built would actually be a great addition to some of the stuff I've been building lately. The one thing that would be interesting, rather than Neo4j, I've been looking at using the Network X library from Python, which is basically what Neo4j is built on, as far as I can tell. And that would give you a hell of a lot more options, and you get direct graph access.
Well, like this thing here, it gives me all the embeddings, and for the files, it even tells it if it's async or not, and it's got embeddings. It can search through embeddings and find semantically similar code, and it can do a whole bunch of stuff. It's got pretty robust details in the nodes themselves and the classes and everything.
And how many dimensions are you running in your embeddings? Is it 15, 67 or whatever the number is?
I don't know. I just use a mini model to embed. And then it also like when you document a function or a code, it embeds that documentation too into it also. So it can use that for part of the search.
Has anyone tried VB8 for this problem? Because they also have a lightweight graph system combined with the vector.
So the weird thing here is that this is kind of the poor man's neural net, and if the data set that you're training on is so much smaller, like the number of tokens that go in, is it feasible to train your private data into a very small model that a large model talks to?
Yes, and I think I understand. I think what you're saying is using one model to train another model or optimize the model. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying take your private data set that the public model, large model, was never able to access, train a very small large language model using LLM techniques, and is the cost of that low enough that then you can interface the large language model to that? Like if it has questions about your local data, it goes hits that model. Because everything else, like vector databases, the Neo4j, these are all approximations of a neural net. And we already know how to build a neural net.
So are you basically saying that turn your code base into a LoRa adapter into a language model and then do everything?
Small language model. So maybe it's not a large, it's an SMM.
Yeah, but that's exactly what DSpy does, right? Inherently, you're essentially creating a secondary, hyper optimized prompt that allows you to, create a kind of secondary model that gets hit before the primary model. Right.
Is it a proper model that has all the characteristics of an LLM?
Yeah, well, proper is as in a compiled, neural net? No. Proper as in does it act like a neural net? Yes. I guess it depends on how you describe, proper. I think that we've become acclimatized to, PyTorch and the compilation process of sort of traditional, mixture of experts models and, that whole sort of, approach to fine tuning and training, using GPUs. But as you point out, most of these models don't require that level of sophistication. And that's why I like DSpy. It acts as a kind of, abstraction that still uses, PyTorch's approach, but allows you to basically just have a JSON-L file that acts as that sort of sits in between the two.
My point being is that, they're training these large models on trillions of tokens of data. And like any corporate's private data model is probably, 1/1,000,000th of that in size, right? And so it actually might be affordable to use the same technique we use for large language models for a small language model and have that private, because that's the big tension, I think, is yeah, the neural net knows a lot about general things, but it knows nothing about my specific business from an enterprise standpoint.
Yeah, that is a good point. There's so many opportunities in the space right now. I think that we're in the sort of wild early days of whatever this phenomenon is that we found ourselves in the midst of. And it's one of those rare moments that a random vibe coder like Chris or whomever can go out and literally invent something that's never been done before by following some random rabbit hole and seeing where it leads. And that's what's kind of exciting.
One thing that I did work on just like a week and a half ago was I built a program. I put it on my GitHub. I put a link in the chat to allowing the LLMs to self-conceptualize themselves using a few biologic functions about like how antibodies and genes work and like how homeoplasticity works, so that the AIs just think on its own concepts and then just build out the graph automatically. So it basically plots a whole knowledge graph with its own knowledge automatically. And then if you have all of the knowledge from an LLM, right, plotted on a knowledge graph, then you can separate the reasoner from the knowledge and then just have a bunch. Isn't that like a thing?
Yeah, it's already a thing. That is the inherent structure of a reasoning language model, right? So that's basically what you're doing when you're using thinking in test time sort of optimization. So what you're doing is essentially explicitly defining the neural structure hypothetically, but that's going to induce all kinds of latency in the model, most likely, right? So what I think the guys at like Dispo and others have done is they've done it in a way that doesn't require that level of sort of, analysis of the inherent structure. It kind of just automatically does it without having to think about why. Yours is going to probably take a process that took 20 seconds and make it 20 minutes.
Well, I was thinking that if you just had like one knowledge graph with all the knowledge and then like just have reasoners that are like a lot smaller that could go on like phones and things and they could all just connect to one big knowledge.
That's GSPO. That's exactly what GSPO does. Yeah, look up GSPO. That you've discovered GSPO without even knowing it. That's literally the purpose of that algorithm. And if you ever use DeepSeek, that was their big aha, right? They basically took the previous model and applied GSPO to it. It's exciting to discover the things that are being discovered independently, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so you say DSPO, like, do you mean the DSPI that you mentioned earlier, or?
No, GSPO. I think it's GSPO, I think is the acronym. I don't remember exactly what it stands for.
GSPO, okay.
Yeah, and so GSPO is essentially the reinforcement algorithm that was used in, I think, Gwen QWQ back in December. And those are the guys in China at Alibaba that came up with Gwen. Then the guys at DeepSeek basically took that and ran with it and trained it on a whole bunch more data, and then DeepSeek was launched. Now, back in September, I created something called Strawberry Pi. I don't know if you guys remember that project, but basically Strawberry Pi was a rudimentary implementation of GSPO on the newly released O1 model. So what I did is I took 2,500 reasoning steps and I put it in a JSON-L model, and then I trained Llama 3.2 on it, and then Llama 3.2 became a reasoning model. And I used Phi, the Phi 3 at the time, I think it was called, from Microsoft. And essentially, that's what it did. It created the ability for it to do test time-based thinking. So when it made the request, it could sort of reflect on why and what it was doing inherently in the neural net versus a secondary agentic process, which you see frequently. So the neural net itself was doing the sort of reasoning and multi-step process versus secondary requests to the neural net or language model. So we're all kind of doing the same stuff. Apparently, the DeepSeek guys were just better at marketing what we'd been doing for months. Just saying.
Hey, thanks for that insight. Very good.
Yeah, it's exciting times, you know. And I'm sure that the GSPO stuff was probably vibe coded on a random, you know, exploration of 01. Well, let's be honest. Like none of these guys that are inventing stuff are super geniuses that are inventing in a vacuum. They're probably doing the same stuff we're doing. They're just putting it in the form of an academic paper where I'm just publishing it randomly on a Tuesday afternoon for a LinkedIn post. Right? I guess I spend more time doing academic papers.
Is like wipe generating academic papers the next thing, like after wipe coding, or
that's already a thing, I think. What you know, paper vibing or vibe papering or something like that. All right, we're out of time here. This was a good one, I think. I really we had one more presentation we skipped. We got I don't have a call at 1:30 today, so
yeah, we can do the next week.
or we do it next week if you prefer. We're kind of out of time, but
yeah, next week.
All right. Yeah, for those who are interested, again, we're doing the ambassador program. So if I think Guy, you mentioned you're interested. I'm sure we have a few others. I'm looking for 3 people who want to like get a little exposure on the ambassador page, so I don't have placeholders. And I'd like you to actually do the actual work as well. But you know, basically that's what I'm looking for. A little diversity if we can. We need to get more women involved in our crew. I don't know. We're too many dudes. I don't have a solution to that problem other than to say we need more diversity. So invite some diversity if you know someone that might be interested.
I'm pretty confident as soon as we move out from the VS Code environments, like the amount of women will start increasing. But as long as all the demos are happening like with true code inside the VS Code environment, I think it's gonna be dudes mostly.
You're saying that dudes love nerdy stuff more than women?
Absolutely. Like as soon as you bring in some design, user interfaces, and other things, like instantly more options.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I'm a nerd. I like hard, complicated things, and I don't. That's just where I'm comfortable.
And Rube, there's a couple of women that I'm aware of that you might be able to reach out to on LinkedIn that probably follow you already. That could potentially create some more exposure for that side of the audience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll give it. We'll give it a. We'll try to solve that. And yeah, I guess we didn't have a chance to do any real Agentic Foundation updates. Tons of interest. What can I say? Agentics is really hot right now. So let's see where this goes. All right, thanks everyone. That's it for today. I was particularly chatty. I guess we blew through more time than I was expecting. But appreciate you all. And if you need anything, ping me on WhatsApp or Discord. And Martin, I'm going to take you up on your offer to help with some of the Discord stuff. So, and if anyone else wants to collaborate, create content, do whatever, just let us know. We're looking for we're all volunteers here. So, till next time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.